Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. So, how are you doing? I hope you're still doing fine despite our situation. So, welcome to the UP Korea Research Center's web lecture. So, I am JR Igno. I will be your host and moderator for today. So, for the information of everyone, UPKRC was launched on April 27th of 2016, aiming to provide Filipino scholars and researchers with opportunities to widen their interest in Korean studies. UPKRC holds various academic and cultural activities for Filipino scholars and professionals and serves as a university-wide hub that will help promote and develop Korean studies in the country. For more information of or updates, visit www.facebook.com UPKRC. And okay, so for today we our topic is about tourism. Okay, in Korea during this the uh, East community quarantine. Okay, so for today, okay, so we have invited a professor, okay, from the Asian Institute of Tourism. He's a senior lecturer at the Asian Institute of Tourism, University of the Philippines. He received a master's degree in tourism science and a bachelor's in business administration, both at Hanyang University, Seoul, South Korea. And he is going to pursue his PhD in business, concentrated on tourism at Temple University, Pennsylvania, USA. He is an author of academic articles published in top-tier international journals and well-known Korean journals, Current Issues in Tourism, Journal of Destination Management and Marketing, International Journal of Tourism, Jour- uh, Tourism Studies, and a lot more. He also participated serving as a project manager in several governmental projects associated with Korean Tourism Organization, Korea Culture and Tourism Institute, and Seoul City. His research areas have covered risk management, tourist happiness, consumer behavior, and cooperative tourism planning. So let's all welcome Professor Wang Gu Lee. Okay, so you can start.
Hello everyone. Can I share my screen?
Oh, yes. Okay.
Will, could you help me with that?
Yes. You can now share your screen.
Okay, thank you very much. So yeah, hello everyone. Um, I hope all of you are doing well, being healthy, and having a great time with your family. My name is Wangu, and I first like to say that this is my big pleasure to have lecture webinar with UP Korean Research Center. Thank you very much for having me. And it is my bigger pleasure that I can be a small help for my second home, the Philippines, and for my beloved Filipino friends and the family. Yeah, so today I prepared a presentation. Um, I prepared a presentation titled Tourism in Korea During Eased Social Distancing. As you know, tourism is one of the most impacted industries from COVID-19. Besides, experts say it's quite uncertain how tourism will be like after the pandemic. So Korean tourism case is, I believe, very insightful because Korea is one of the very few countries currently in less strict quarantine. So which means it may give a picture how tourism looks like after COVID-19. I heard from the Korean Research Center that in this webinar there are several different kinds of audiences like students, professors, governors, and business owners. So I hope the case of Korean tourism can give many insights and also many implications in public administration, business administration, and also for the academia. So first, I will briefly explain the situation of South Korea with the COVID-19, and then discuss the impacts of COVID-19 in Korean tourism, and how the Korean tourism is like with the eased social distancing policy, and the future of Korean tourism after Corona. And lastly, I'll give some implication for the Philippine tourism. So yeah, first, I believe that many of you already have read some news articles about how Korea has been dealing with the outbreak. It was in peak last February after the massive infection was reported in a church group. But Korea succeeded to manage the new infection quickly, and now we have around plus minus 10 daily infections only. As you can see, the total confirmed case is um, 11,122, and the fatality rate is only 2.37%, and the recovery rate is over 90%. So the currently around 700 infected people are isolated, while 264 died directly or indirectly by the virus. Korean government utilized several tactics and policies to overcome COVID-19. As you know, Korea actually did not shut down. We didn't use the shutdown or lockdown in the national range or even for the regional range. And we also did not force most service businesses or other businesses and also religious facilities to close. But we still operated the transportation systems as well. So many people still go to work. They still eat in a restaurant, or they take the trains and buses. You know, the trains which are packed by the people in a rush hour. But we still experienced it during the COVID-19. But consequently, we did not have any case of infection in public transportation. Maybe because everyone was wearing masks. I personally could feel kind of like a social pressure that I must wear masks most proper. I had to wear mask inside the buses and trains. So yeah, um, aside from the social distancing rule, the Korean government also had to manage the distribution of the mask to prevent the panic buy. They ruled that one person can buy only two K94 or K84 medical masks in a week with a fixed price, which is 2001. If I convert to the pesos, it's gonna be 80 pesos per mask. So, well, actually from last week, now we can buy 3 masks per week and the price is decreased to around 60 pesos. So when we go to the pharmacist will check with the online system if we already bought the mask this week. And after that, they finally let us have them. And thirdly, Korea also tried to maximize the capacity of COVID-19 tests. So in terms of the testing fee, let's say I go to the hospital just to casually have COVID-19 test because I'm just personally concerned about my health. Then I need to pay around 160 US dollars. But if I'm suspected to hold the virus, especially from the pre-test, then the test price will be free. I don't have to pay anything. So yeah. And the last policy that the Korean government did, and also local regional government, they provided us monetary supports. So some of the money were provided in the local currency. So this money can be utilized. This money can be spent only in the local areas. So it can be used to activate the local economy. Okay. And as I said, from the end of April, we started to manage the infection rate in a low level. And finally, the Korean government decided to ease the policy of social distancing. So from April 26, the government announced to implement so-called eased social distancing policy, which allows most businesses and facilities to open with some restrictions. So, like for example, in the church, there are several rules. Like before we enter the building, they check the body temperature of us, put some hand sanitizer, and ask us to sit far from each other, like 1 or 2 meters away from each other. Yeah, and so forth. So from April, we reopen most of the outdoor spaces, such as national parks, forests, gardens, and sport fields, and also some of the indoor facilities. If they allow to manage the place with strict guidelines, they cannot, they can open it. And also regarding the big gathering spaces like church, schools, gyms, it is actually still not recommended to open, but if they want, they could open it. So it's kind of allowed it. Um, so after 2 weeks of eased social distancing policy, we decided to go to the next stage, which we call distancing in daily life. So from May 6th, we slowly started going back to normal. Students are going back to the school step by step. First, the high schoolers will go back to the school first, and then middle schoolers, and then elementary school and kindergarten. And also employees who were telecommuting, who were working at home for temporarily, they started going back to the office, I mean, the offline offices as well. Yeah, so this is how we are doing in South Korea with the COVID-19. So how about tourism? Yeah, what has Korean tourism experienced by COVID-19 and what Korean tourism has been doing to overcome the COVID-19? First, yeah, airports became empty. There were more than 50 million airport users last year in March, but this March, it was only 0.8 million users because people do not travel abroad, not only for the leisure, but also for the business purposes. So it was estimated that Korean air industry lost approximately 50 billion US dollars just for the half of the 2020, just for the first half of 2020. And this trend goes the same for travel agencies. So we say, Koreans usually say, like Korean tourism experts usually say like 3 companies in a day, excuse me, 3 companies in a day quit their business these days. So it is reported that as of now, 400 tourism agencies closed their businesses in 2020. So in Korea, actually, the most famous tourism agency company is Hana Tour. It's a lot in the Philippines as well. I had the chance to have a personal conversation with one of the Hana Tour managers, and that's when I was participating in one governmental project, and he mentioned that on February he was feeling kind of relieved that he's working in such a big company that seemed not to be affected by COVID-19. But he and also his colleagues got really, really shocked when Hanatura announced the massive layoffs. Only like without some did not get any payment during the layoff, and some just got like 70% or 80% of the payment during the layoffs. So yeah, travel agencies are not doing well. And third impact is in the international tourists. I think this will be same in all around the world, but also in Korea, the number of inbound tourists were 80,000, which is the same number reported back in the 80s, like when Korea was not that much globalized. And also outbound tourists were only 140,000 people comparing last year, which reported more than 2 million outbound tourists. And the last uh, key impact is in the domestic tourism. And I'd like to mention about the local festivals as well. In Korea, the regional local festivals account for a major part of local tourism. So last year, around 11 million people visited one of the local festivals. And it is estimated that there was $80 million of the economic effect from the festivals. But when the COVID-19 outbreak was in peak, like in February, all the festivals were just closed, and the festival administrators even had to stop a few people who just want to visit the nature festival spaces. They had to block the roads, or they had to even cut the nature festival resources like plants, flower, or trees, and so forth. That's quite unfortunate. In fact, Korean government has been supporting tourism sector very carefully because tourism is most impacted industry by COVID-19, and also it is very closely related with other industries such as transportation, retail shop, shopping, lodging, and so forth. And therefore, the it is expected to harm seriously the national economy as well. Mhm. So therefore, many governmental sectors have tried to support Korean tourism, specifically for the Korean tourism. You see in this screen, the supports are not actually from the tourism sector, but the higher governmental sector and the regional governments, like Seoul City government, also provided various kinds of assistances. I'd like to briefly introduce examples of support from higher government sector, especially from the Ministry of Employment and Labor and Tourism sector, Ministry of Culture, Sports and Tourism, and also regional sector, which is Seoul City. If you are in the position for the policy making in the Philippines, maybe this can give an opportunity that you can compare the Philippines COVID-19 response policies and also Korean policies. I just brought brief pinpointed introduction though. So if you're interested in one of the policies here, you may consider to check details in a later time, or you can just ask it later for the detailed information sources. So for um, so regarding the policies from the Ministry of Employment and Labor, they implemented a program which they titled a Special Employment Support Program for Tourism and Entertainment. So they especially support four tourism-related industries. There are entertainment, lodging, transportation, and travel. For employers, MEL is abbreviation of Ministry of Employment and Labor. Um, they supported 90% of payment for the laid off employees. They supported this money, so the companies just not simply fire the people, which may increase the national unemployment rate dramatically, but they can actually give chances to employees to be temporarily laid off, even with the payment. So 90% of the payment will be provided by MEL, while companies only have to pay 10% for the laid off employees. Aside from them, MEL also extended like payment due for several insurances and does not ask to pay the late fee temporarily. And they also provide like an increased amount of funds which can be used for training employees. And for the employees, MEL extended the loan repayment due from 5 years to 8 years maximum, and also lend a student loan up to 70 $7,000 per year. Next, regarding the policies from the Ministry of Culture, Sports, and Tourism, they also focused on the loan program. First, they invested around $100 million for special support loan program, and each company can ask money up to $200,000. And aside from this special loan program, they also additionally more money for regular loan program. So tourism companies not only lend more money from regular loan service, but also they can ask additional $200,000. So this is a lot of money. This is really a lot of money, but Korean government just judged that they concluded that this is better than too many companies close their businesses due to lack of revenue. Also, MCIT is Ministry of Culture, Sports, and Tourism. They also prepared a total of $12 billion together with the national banks. It's for assisting small local businesses. With this, each company can ask for $150,000. And more importantly, the interest rate is only 1.5%, which is very low, which is very helpful for the local small businesses. Aside from the loan programs, MCST also decided to suspend their hotel rating inspection until COVID-19 is over. And also they referred tax payment, and they also provided risk management training for the employees. Lastly, regarding the policies from the Seoul City, I brought Seoul City case because I live in Seoul, and Seoul is the most popular and developed travel destination in Korea. So regarding Seoul City, first they came up with the broad idea of how to recover tourism from COVID-19. As you can see in the screen, they divided their plan into 3 different stages. So there are the first one is response stage, and then recovery phase, and stage. So in the response stage, they urgently help tourism businesses that seriously impacted by COVID-19 situation, and at the same time, they start to advertise the safety of Seoul. And in recovery stage, they put most effort to expand and wake up the tourism demands by developing like film or nighttime tourism, or by funding the money for part-time workers to enjoy leisure life, and by supporting tourism startup companies. And finally, in leap stage, they plan to diversify the tourism market segments, because unlike before, like Seoul heavily depended on the Chinese market, but the new Seoul tourism will be not only from Chinese, but also from other nationalities and also local Koreans. So they announced that also have planned to reinforce the tourism ecosystem as well. So yeah, oh yeah, there's another project Seoul created, which is called Seoul Crisis Overcoming Project. They provided $5,000 each to the tourism company based on Seoul. So this was already conducted in March, and the second phase of this project will be done again on June. So yeah, this is how Korea has been done with tourism in the COVID situation. But as I said earlier, Korea is now implementing more eased social distancing, right? More eased form of social distancing. So the question is, in this eased situation, can we actually expect any tourism activity? Can we find tourism with eased social distancing? The brief answer for me is yes, but it's gonna be only in domestic tourism and in a very limited way and very careful way. There are actually not a lot of things to discuss, but there are two cases that I would like to mention by observing the Korean tourism scene during right now eased social distancing period. The first one is booming in outdoor recreation destinations such as mountains, national parks, or the river sides. So after COVID-19 situation got a bit better and the Korean government announced eased social distancing rules, the demand for hiking, which is actually most popular leisure activity in Korea, the demand for the hiking was skyrocketing. And as you know, as you can see in the picture, yeah, as you can see in the picture, the mountainous places, the national parks, or even the camping sites are now fully packed and fully reserved by the people who perceive the spaces. Like this kind of spaces is relatively safer than indoor travel destinations. And another case that I'd like to mention is actually bars and clubs. So yeah, after ease social distancing, most bars, clubs, and pubs started their business again. So as we all know, this place is utterly different with national park or the mountains. People undoubtedly very closely connect to each other, and also they often shout and scream, causing like saliva going out from their mouths. So these places are kind of vulnerable for the infections. And eventually and unfortunately, yeah, a fresh massive infection occurred from one club in Seoul, and as of now, there are nearly 200 new infected relevant patients. So I think this actually proves how difficult it is for tourism and the relevant industries to go back to normal or to go to new normal as well. So I think it is a good lesson that even though COVID-19 is in decreasing phase, going back to normal should be very carefully decided by evaluating all the stuff objectively, comprehensively, and scientifically. Now, I'd like to discuss the future of Korean tourism after COVID-19. I admit that the future of tourism is very uncertain. It's very uncertain. We don't know. We cannot expect when COVID-19 will be ended. We don't know what's gonna happen after that. But there are some perspectives that the Korean tourism experts and scholars consent with the points that Korean experts consent with the future of Korean tourism. So the first is about domestic tourism. Surely it is expected that demand for traveling within Korea will be increased since international tourism is still risky. It's still risky and it's still restricted. But people will think domestic tourism is relatively safe. So followed by these increased demands, there will be also a new market segment, such as small form tourism or solo tour, like safe tour, or just staying in a region for a long period, etc. Also, experts believe this is actually a great opportunity for regional tourism destinations, uh, because Koreans have visited only 60% of the regions in Korea. It is reported like that. So once they open their eyes for the domestic tourism, there will be a high potential to local tourism to grow quickly, and then they can diversify the markets. Secondly, it's about flexible cancellation and refund policy. Before COVID-19, let's say when we book the hotel or when we reserve the tours, one of the most important considerations is actually the price, right? Whether it's cheap, whether it's expensive or not. However, after COVID-19, it is expected that Korean will consider the flexibility in changing canceling or getting a refund as another key determinant in purchasing the tourism products. Thirdly, um, it's a small form tourism. Korean tourists, especially from the old generation, um, it is quite common. It's really common to find uh, to find it's really common to travel somewhere with the group package tour, like with more than 30 people together. But after COVID-19, the new standard for the Korean tourism is expected to be the small form tour. So for existing package tours, it will be changed. It will be transformed to smaller size tours. People will just travel only with their family or close friends rather than before they organize like a big group just to travel all together. Also, rather than volume sales strategy with like very cheap but low quality tours. It's very prevalent in Korea before Corona, but it is expected that customizing tours, luxury tours, or stuff like that, that people can visit not just popular touristic places, but unpopular places that they desire to explore or experience. These kind of tours will emerge. Next is nature tourism. As I mentioned earlier, yeah, Koreans are already going to hike, camp, or play golf or other sports. So people think it is relatively safe. So it's necessary in the future after Corona, it's necessary to pay attention in nature-themed tourism. So there will be more opportunity for this kind of tourism, nature tourism activities. And the next one is untech tourism. During quarantine, people from all around the world, not only Korean but others, including the Filipinos, we experienced and got familiarized with telecommuting or online learning or stuff like that. You know, in the perspective tourism, it is expected that technology-based services that do not require to contact people with like kiosk or self-service machines or IoT-based tourism products, I believe these will be increasingly utilized. But at the same time, employment rate might be decreased because the machines might replace their roles as well. And besides, I believe virtual tourism with like VR or AR technologies can be one of the alternative forms of tourism as well. And lastly, it is expected that Korean tourists will consider safety as a key travel factor. Actually, safety perception is not the motivator for tourism. It's not motivator, but it's just demotivator. When once once enough level of safety is achieved, people try to find different factors or different motivations to travel someplace. But maybe it might be different after Corona. Um, Koreans already experienced not only COVID-19, but also we have experienced different kind of crisis or disasters like huge tourism accidents or the terrors from the tourism destinations. So that's another reason why Korean government and the regional governments and also every destinations must develop a crisis management system to prepare possible risks, crisis, and disasters. In this sense, I expect a tourism shared economy industry, like Airbnb, contract may be decreased since a high level of safety is not really guaranteed compared to the traditional types of hotel accommodations. So they need to come up with the ideas to increase the safety perception from the Airbnb guests. So yeah, those are The ones that I would like to share today about Korean tourism with COVID-19. I'm I'm confident to say that um, Korean tourism case it can give some ideas for the Philippine tourism as well. So I prepared just a few implication points that Philippine tourism might want to think about and check. The first one, does the Philippine tourism sector really need a lot of monetary support or not really? As I mentioned, for Korea, we decided to invest a lot of money, a huge amount of money to tourism because it's highly impacted, it's seriously impacted, and also Korea economy is highly likely to be impacted by the tourism. But at the same time, tourism is not actually considered as a basic need in basic human need. So especially in this urgent circumstance. So how about in the Philippines? Is the support from tourism sector enough or lacking? Or and how is it distributed to tourism sectors? Second, how will Philippine tourism be like after easing social distancing? Will Filipinos travel somewhere in the Philippines? Will it be safe enough? Do people perceive it safe? I know that Filipinos love to gather a lot. So yeah, is there any lesson from the recent club outbreak in South Korea? Lastly, domestic tourism. I think it's a chance to sustainably develop new destinations. Tourists will not go abroad, but they will be remained in the Philippines. Tourists will demand to explore less crowded destinations. So is there any possible reasons for the new development? Okay, so that's all for now. I hope that my short lecture gave small insights for you and also for the Philippines. I'm personally one of the admirers of the Philippine tourism. I believe that it's not only fun in the Philippines, but it's also meaningful in the Philippines. So I hope that my lecture was helpful and thank you very much for listening. Thank you. Maraming salamat po.
Okay. So thank you so much for that very meaningful lecture. I think there are some other participants who want to ask questions, but we'll start first with the ones that were present. Okay, because most participants already sent their questions ahead
Mhm.
before joining
That's great.
today's presentation. But actually, some of the questions were have been answered in the presentation. Maybe if those questions were already presented, maybe you could just add some more thoughts or maybe some suggestions. Okay. So
Sure, no
actually,
problem.
I prepared those questions in a slide as well, so others can also see the questions. Okay, so I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to share now the questions. So yeah, I call the question and answer easy Q&A because we're now under ECQ or enhanced community quarantine in the Philippines. So our Q&A for today is easy
Wow,
Q&A.
that's great.
Okay. So yes, let's have the easy Q&A now. So the first question was, how does COVID-19 affect the economy and tourism of South Korea? So
Mhm.
actually, maybe the other question is somehow related. So I think you can also link it to the first question that what tourism
Mhm.
related industries were most affected and how did the government deal with this and what will be the new normal for the Korean tourism industry, example in the K-pop industry, which is a big driver for tourism. So that's the first question.
Mm. Yeah, my presentation was actually wanted to one of the aims were actually wanted to tell that the tourism is most impacted, and also tourism can be connected with other industries and also the whole economy of the nation. So yes, can I go to the different question, the second question?
Yes, this one.
Thank you.
This is
Uh,
more specific.
mhm. So yeah, tourism related industries. I think the most affected industry is it's actually hard to choose, hard to pick the one, because the tourism though as a whole perspective is kind of decreased after the COVID-19 happened. So,
Yes.
but if I have to say that I need to pick one, it's gonna be the industry which is related with the international tourism. For the
Mhm.
domestic tourism, in Korea, we observed that it might be, but it's slow, but it might be recovered a bit
Mhm.
faster than international tourism. So they have a hope. They kind of have a hope if they
Mhm.
get um, enough support from the government, or they might just disappear or something like that. So I think, in my opinion, the international tourism industry is really in a danger.
Okay.
And what will be the new normal for Korean's tourism industry? For example, in the K-pop industry. Um, Speaking of the K-pop industry, I believe that I personally think that there is an opportunity, because K-pop can be transformed to the digital tourism or smart tourism. You know, K-pop is all about the media. It's all about visuals and audios, stuff like that. So there are some parts that do not need the direct contact with the celebrities or something, but they just can watch, they can experience
Mhm.
with the screen or any relevant technologies. So I believe that K-pop can be great options to expand the digital and the smart tourism.
Okay. So I think that this is a great opportunity for the domestic tourism industry
Yes,
to
exactly.
yes to be recovered or to be expanded. Okay. So let's move to the next question. So what do you think are the best practices of South Korea in handling COVID-19? Actually, we've been seeing, of course, some on the news, but as a person
Mm,
from South Korea,
mhm.
so and where we can
Yeah.
learn less and somehow adapt.
Mhm. Um, in general, not only specifically for the tourism, I personally believe um, anything related to control the panic buy was the
Mhm.
great practice. Like the one of the examples was the distributing the mask distribution policy, that
Mhm.
we can buy the mask like two or three pieces in a week, and everything is systemized in the online. Everything is managed by the online system, so they can track whether the people bought the mask or not. So yeah, so the masks can be distributed very fairly, and
Mhm.
everyone can get the enough masks as well. So
Mhm.
I think that's one of the best practices that the South Korea implemented. And in terms of tourism, um, tourism, for the tourism sector, the serious problem is actually in the economical perspective. So I personally believe the best practice is to give a lot of money, or to lend a lot of money as well.
Mhm.
Mm, um, but at the same time, it's actually from only the tourism perspective. But as a policymaker, they might also have to think the how to balance the investments, not only to the tourism but also in a different sectors as well. So
Mhm.
yeah, but as a tourism player, I think the best practice is giving a lot of money.
Okay, so noted with that. And
Mhm.
but actually, we as we can see in the news, Korea has a lot of testing capacity that you were able to. Yeah, you
Mm,
mentioned in your presentation as well that there's like a mass testing, and then anyone who wants to be tested can get it
yes,
very
that's true.
cheaply.
Hmm.
So I think that's another notable practice in
Yes.
South Korea.
Actually, for the mass testing, it's functionally great that
Hmm.
all in terms of health and the function, it's great that all the people can have the chance to get tested. But at the same
Hmm.
time, it's really, really good tactic.
Hmm.
So people do not panic.
Yes.
It's really important that people do not panic, so they can have like reasonable idea, and
Hmm.
they can be calm, so they can be organized or stuff like that. So I
Hmm.
believe that's it, kind of connected to each other.
And okay, how about the contact tracing? I actually because I have some friends who who are in Korea, and yeah, they said that the contact tracing is actually also very beneficial.
Could you repeat that?
The
Contact.
contact tracing, that you have like for example those who are infected uh, in the
Ah,
81 bars, they were able to contact all those who were in the place after the event, or something like that.
you mean the
That
tracking the people who are
yes, yes, yes.
infected?
Are
Ah,
those who have been in contact with those people who got infected. So
mm,
you have an application actually on phones as well.
uh,
I heard about that.
yes, we have the application to track it because the
Mm-hmm.
government right now, temporarily, government is opening the information like
Mm-hmm.
to public. So even for like news articles, news
Mm-hmm.
reports, and the personal blogs or SNS, they can just share it. They can just spread the information. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not only from the applications, but you can kind of find it easily in all around the internet.
Oh. Are
Yes.
are there no issues on data privacy
Yeah, this is a
related to that?
controversy. I believe it's controversy, but since we are having like a global health crisis, I can
Mm-hmm.
observe that the conflicts between the privacy and then health
Mm-hmm.
are not really big. People are not really expressing uh, the complaints about that.
Mm-hmm. Because here in the Philippines, the problem is that there are discrimination amongst those who are like, for example, you're a relative or
Mm,
you're a family member of that person who got infected.
mhm.
Being discriminated. So actually,
That's one
that's
of the
why.
problems, actually. Yeah, it's clearly it is clearly observable that
Mm-hmm.
people say bad things in the internet about
Mm-hmm.
them or stuff like that,
But do you
especially
think it will
for
it, it will be helpful?
uh,
Personally,
I
if we will
believe that
identify.
I believe that there are pros and cons to track
Yes.
and open the data.
Mm-hmm.
I personally do not support it,
Mm-hmm.
but I can understand that there are pros, like
Mm-hmm.
people can track where the patients were,
Mm-hmm.
and people can track where if they are close or far from the infected or something like
Yes.
that, they can be
Mm-hmm.
calmed and relieved. It's the good points. But
Mm-hmm.
in a general, if we think about different values like privacy or freedom or like
Yes.
liberty or stuff like that, maybe it harm too many values. Personally, I
Yes.
believe that it's not really functional. It's not really practical,
Mm-hmm.
but it gives the great ecological
Mm-hmm.
benefits. But
Yes, I think
yeah,
so.
in general, if we just sum all the pros and cons at the same time, I believe we
Mm-hmm.
will lose more.
Yes.
Mhm.
So the question of the best practices were raised. How about what's it? I think yeah. It was also being asked, what do you think is the weakness of the Korean government in terms of addressing COVID-19 related issues, like in opening establishments and tourist sites, just like what happened to the bars and clubs in Itaewon.
Mm-mm.
or maybe other
Um,
cases?
Other case. Well, surely, the club case, was
Do you
caused
think
because we thought, uh-huh.
yeah, it was like done really ahead of time? They should haven't opened yet.
Um, it's actually complicated matters because if we are only think about the health and if we are
Yes.
only think about the public health, yes, of course, we should close all the clubs and bars and pubs.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, since the COVID-19 occurred in Korea, we actually
Mm-hmm.
did not close all the pubs and clubs and bars.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't. Actually,
Mm-hmm.
it was operated,
Mm-hmm.
and then people still drink, people still go to the
Mm-hmm.
restaurants, people still hang out or stuff like that, even though it's restricted, even though not a lot of people go there,
Mm-hmm.
but it happened.
Mm.
mm,
Yeah, because in the case of
so
the Philippines, when they started opening the malls, also people were like, yeah, they crowded in the shopping malls as well.
but for the club case, I believe it's not because they opened it too early, but
Uh-huh.
because people became naive. I think it's big difference because as I said again, we already we were operating from the start. We were
Mm-hmm.
operating the restaurants and bars from the start, but it didn't happen. But it happened right now because they became naive about, you
Mm-hmm.
know,
Going to
protecting
such places.
themselves or others
Yes.
by
Mm-hmm.
screaming, shouting, or having like skinship or stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So for other questions, uh, oops. Okay. So yeah, I think this has been discussed a while ago. So
Mm-hmm.
about the economic situation. So maybe we could just focus on the related questions, like for example, the unemployment rate in South Korea. So especially for foreigners looking for a job in Korea, and then I think other factories like in the manufacturing and the tourism industry are declining. So
Mm.
how would you define the new normal in this situation? Like there are
Mm.
for example, Filipino workers there, and then some have no jobs these days.
Mm-hmm.
And in other countries, there, like for example, they were sent back to their home countries.
Yeah, and it's just very unfortunate that it's impacted not only for the Koreans but also foreigners. Well, I believe that foreigners, in some perspectives, there might be more vulnerable, um,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of the employment, especially in Korea, where um, um, the uh, protecting the securing the foreigners' job is quite vulnerable. So yes, I believe we all are having hard time to look for a job.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I honestly cannot think about the ways for the
Mm-hmm.
foreigners to look for a job, but I believe that the Korean government also have to make some policies or some tactics that they
Mm-hmm.
can secure the foreigners' job,
Yes,
foreigners' career, not only for the local
locals.
Koreans' employment. There are a lot of, actually, there are a lot of policies that Korean employees can be secured in terms
Mm-hmm.
of finance or in terms of employment. But with my research, with my best knowledge, I could not find any policies which secure the foreigners. There may be, but it's not the big benefits or it's not the big
Mm-hmm.
assistance for them. So I hope that maybe in the future, because it's
Mm-hmm.
already happened, but maybe in the future, for preparing for the same global crisis or health
Mm-hmm.
crisis or others, I believe the policymakers and politicians also should consider the employment of the foreigners as well in Korea.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you so much for that. So
Mhm.
let's proceed to the next question. As we were just reading the present questions, these are the questions that were sent by the participants when they submitted their intention to attend to today's webinar. So I think some of these were also discussed a while ago, like what safe steps can the government do to revive the industry and bounce back from the effects of the pandemic. So maybe,
Mhm.
uh, yeah, so maybe like additional information or comments on how can industry experts help businesses strategize effectively in the next 6 to 12 months. Are there, like for example, strategic plans from the government like for example, yeah, I think you have mentioned the supports from the Ministry of Employment and Labor, and like for example the loans, right? So I think those are
Mhm.
specific strategies the government is doing.
Yeah.
So do you
Sir,
have
maybe we
any
can go
other
to we actually
perspective?
can go to maybe one of the questions from the Q&A here, and
Yeah,
then
in
we
the
finish it.
yeah, but I maybe we can finish the these ones were sent before the beforehand, so maybe we can also check first if you haven't presented some of this, and
Okay,
then we
sure.
will proceed to the ones sent just today. Okay. So, do you have any other suggestion or any other specific uh, uh, comments on this question? Like
Mm,
aside from those that you have mentioned about the like the government strategies, so those do you think those are enough uh, uh,
Yeah.
strategies uh, the
For
government is
yes,
doing?
for now, I believe I personally think that um
Like also the
I personally
Ministry of
believe that it personally believe that it is enough for now because
uh,
uncertainty is too big,
mhm.
so
Yeah.
we cannot easily go to specific ideas or specific
Yes.
strategies easily.
Hmm. Yes.
Um, yeah, so in the next 6 and 12 months seems quite far to expect what's gonna happen.
Yes. A lot of
Mhm.
uncertainties these days. Yes.
Mhm.
So, okay. So, are there, like, for example, like tourism infrastructures, like both hard and soft? Like, are there any like manipulations or like are they building like other facilities in order to address the concerns of the people in terms of safety,
Mhm.
aside from wearing
Obviously, it's
masks?
gonna be. um,
Like for example, that sanitation areas, something like that. Would
yes.
would
So,
you think it will continue for the succeeding months and for the how long?
uh, for me, I guess that eh, like every relevant factor with the safety
Mm-hmm.
should be designed for
Mm-hmm.
the tourism in infrastructures or tourist destinations.
Mm-hmm.
Especially right after we just we became
Mm-hmm.
overcome from the COVID-19 because everyone is very sensitive about health issues.
Yes, yes. I think so.
But at the same time, tourists are the one who pursue for something novel, something which contain the novelty and something.
Mm-hmm.
When I say novelty, which that means it fundamentally contains something risk. something risky.
Mm-hmm.
The tourists love to pursue something thrilling. The tourists are in somehow they are the risk takers.
Yes,
So I
and they will be
believe,
mindful.
so I believe that the new normal, people say about the new normal tourism, but I believe that people will perceive the safety as a really important factor,
Mm-hmm.
not for too long period, maybe for a few
Mm-hmm.
years, maybe for a
Mm-hmm.
decade. But after that, since tourists have a fundamental desire to take the risk and get the novel stuff, something exciting, something thrilling, uh, safety shouldn't be the ultimate factor, but it can be the temporal factor.
Okay, so yeah, do you have any something to add to this? Like, what are the future jobs
What
in
are the
tourism
future
industry
jobs in tourism
after COVID
industry
19?
after COVID-19? Uh, of course, the health related the people. Um, right now, let's say in hotel, there are like the managers for the HR, the managers for the F&B, or the leisure activity, or the housekeeping, or the front
Mm-hmm.
desk. But there may be they may consider to have
Mm-hmm.
which another manager which um,
Deals
manage
with the
the
safety
health
and
related issues in
uh-huh.
hotel. It can be applied in other hospitality industries like in the cruise or in
Mm-hmm.
the restaurants or even for the
Yes.
destinations as well. Um, yeah, so future jobs like health, let's say health
Health related.
or crisis monitor
Uh-huh.
agencies or something like that. Yeah, these kind of you know the jobs between the health issues and tourism issues will be
Mm-hmm.
booming, I believe.
Okay. Okay. So how about okay, so okay, this is very interesting question. Actually, a lot
Hmm.
have sent this. It's almost the same question. Like, would it be possible for South Korea to accept tourists by late 2020, like the last quarter, autumn winter season? And if yes, what establishments would be open for tourists during this time? Would you
Well,
be
I also
accepting
have one.
international?
Mhm. There are many friends who want to visit me to South Korea as well.
Actually, I
Uh,
think a lot also have bought their tickets already.
really?
Yeah, they have bought it like a year before, like for this October. There were questions like specifically like the months of August, September.
Mm, I'm still.
Are there
Yeah,
no
I also
there are no
personally
announcements
want
yet?
to. Yeah, there's no announcement. There's no announcement whether we are gonna accept the
Uh-huh.
tourist. And for now, people are not really toward accepting the
Mm-hmm.
international tourists
Mm-hmm.
so far. But at the same time, they also need to reopen the destinations so um, they can restart the tourism
Mm-hmm.
industry. Uh, so would it be possible for South Korea to accept the tourists by late 2020? The answer is I don't know. And
Yeah,
if
we don't know
yes,
yet.
if it's yes, the establishments, it's again, it's so same, but yeah, the safety will be the most important issue.
Yeah, maybe the
Um,
open air
yes,
destinations,
maybe,
like for example the parks,
yeah, as I mentioned, like the parks, the outdoor
hmm
recreation park
hmm
places, or
where you can
some
observe
nature,
social distancing as well.
mountain areas, rather than the packed,
Hmm
fully, rather than the crowded streets like Myeongdong, Hongdae, where it's a very touristic place in Seoul.
hmm
But Korea should try to distribute them to more to the nature places like mountainous area. We also
hmm
have a lot of beautiful mountainous destinations, nature
Yes.
destinations as well. Not only the mountains, but also riversides, river or the beach, or
Mm-hmm.
different kind of nature. So yeah, it might be the great opportunity for Korea to introduce these places to the Filipinos and
But we have to
other
remember if it is
foreign.
yes. Yeah. If
I
we
hope
both
that, but I
agree.
just personally think that maybe a lot of people just want to go to Nami Island, where it's very
Mm-hmm.
famous, and it might be too packed
Oh yeah.
for the foreigners. So the social distancing might be quite hard.
Okay. So actually, I personally have received an invitation actually this coming June for a wedding. So, but I don't think I can go. So it's too
I
early
hope I hope that the situation goes
next month.
quick
Hmm.
quickly
So
changed
actually, there
so
are
we can go.
related questions like there are certain restrictions and also yeah accommodations and visa concern like visa requirements for tourists. So you mentioned a while ago that yeah there are no announcements yet. So how about
Mhm.
the graduate students? Like for example, for the fall semester, do you have any news or like any information about getting visa for like for academic purposes?
I don't know whether they're issuing the visa, but I know that there are foreign students who are still studying in Korea.
Hmm. How about newly admitted students?
Oh, I don't know. I
You
haven't
know,
checked it.
so maybe
Yes.
there are information about that with the university concerned.
Yes,
You have to
universities will
ask
know,
them.
and also the
Uh-huh.
embassy. But yeah,
Hmm.
universities, they will know
Yeah.
for sure.
Okay. So I think we have to get through with these questions. Okay. So if you want to just to answer this question, like what significant changes are we expecting? So I think we have already answered this a while ago. Okay. How do you foresee the Korean market in ASEAN region and what about the Philippines?
That's very general.
Yeah. And this one, having been teaching in Asian Institute of Tourism, you know well that the Philippines is not just Boracay. How can we turn it around to get them to other islands the fastest way? So maybe the ones that you mentioned a while ago, like the domestic tourism, like maybe the Korean experience, maybe you can share it to the like for us, those who are also working in the tourism industry in the Philippines. Because actually, as I've read the participants' profile today, there are a lot of uh, those who are working in the tourism industry in today's webinar session. So maybe you can share some
Mm.
of your knowledge about like what are the best practices in Korea in terms of like improving the domestic tourism, and so we can apply it to the Philippines.
Mm. Oh, yeah. The procedure to develop the local tourism in Korea, it's very much governmental.
Mm-hmm.
This is just a Korean case, but maybe it's different with other countries or in the Philippines. But for Korea, for the local government in Korea, when they want to develop the local tourism scenes, local tourism products, or local tourism destinations, or something like that, they usually they usually work together. They usually work with the either
Mm-hmm.
private consulting company or with
Mm-hmm.
um, scholarly researchers or professors.
Mm-hmm.
So they have like common. They first have like tourism planning, specific tourism
Mm-hmm.
planning with the all the experts all together,
Mm-hmm.
and they have like from starting from the vision, starting from like their common goals, and then they find the problems or stuff like that, and then they apply it to their destinations or the products. So maybe it might be, I'm not 100% sure how the local Philippine destinations would
Mm-hmm.
work, whether they are developed usually with the private sector like hotel or
Mm-hmm.
international
Yeah, and the
scenes,
travel
or
agencies as well.
Hmm. So for Korea, it's almost from the local government and then experts.
And then that. Uh-huh.
Hmm. The pro is that they care all the different values, not only for the economics, but also
Mhm.
like they care about the sustainability in tourism development. So they care about not only the economic benefits, but also they care
Mhm.
about the residential well-being, the
Yes.
cultural values and historical values, and
Mhm.
also the environmental values as well. This is good, but the con is that it's not economically beneficial. It's not
Mhm.
really economically beneficial because it's not from the private sector. It's not from the
Mhm.
business area. So
So.
they're usually gonna lose money. So
Mhm.
they get the funds or support from the Korean government,
Uh-huh.
or it's quite difficult. I'm not saying that it's impossible, but it's quite
Uh-huh.
difficult for them just to stand by themselves.
Uh-huh.
That's one of the cons that I observed.
Okay. So that means there's a close working relationship between the private sectors and then the stakeholders, the local community, and then the national government, like for example, the Ministry of Culture, Tourism, and Sports, right?
Yes, that's true. But the the managerial position, let's say that the
Mm-hmm.
project manager is in the
The
government, not
higher.
in private sector. Yes.
Uh-huh. Yes. Okay. So I think we have a participant from the Department of Tourism in today, the Philippines Department of Tourism. So I think,
Sure, I invited
yeah.
them.
I think there's someone from the Department of Tourism today. So I think we can apply that to the Philippines as well. Okay.
Global.
So there's also questions about how do we go back to school, like transforming the new normal schools in South Korea and effective teaching techniques of teachers during the pandemic or like
Oh,
even
I'm
the
not the
after.
education expert.
So, what are in the news nowadays in South Korea with regards to the resumption of classes?
Mm,
Yeah.
they are resuming the classes, the offline classes.
Mm-hmm.
So for now, the third grader in high school, they came back
Mm-hmm.
to school. Next week, it's gonna be second grader, and then first grader the later
Mm-hmm.
weeks, and it's gonna be middle school and elementary school. They
Mm-hmm.
do not intend to return at the same time at once because it might
Mm-hmm.
be too risky. So they're doing step by step.
Mm-hmm. And then
Mm.
different schedules.
Oh yeah, another tactic that they're doing is like for 1 week only first grader and then third grader will go to the
Uh-huh.
school, and another the next week only the second grader will go to school or something like
Yes.
that. They are
It's
getting
quite
kind of
complicated,
creative. It's
but it's
complicated.
actually
Creativity is complete always
yeah.
complex.
Yes. Actually, in the Philippines, they're yeah, because they are planning to open uh, the elementary and high school classes on August, and then there are like
August.
uh, debates on whether we're really ready for that, and, or isn't it too risky yet? So
Mm.
yeah, in the case of the University of the Philippines, they're also still looking at it. Like for example, we can do distance learning as well. So how about
Mm.
in South Korea? I think you have more prepared facilities and infrastructures with regards to that. So aren't you also doing such actions in terms of the academic teachings, like
um
the
for the
online as well?
university, yes, for the university, yes, we in my school, well, I'll
Mm-hmm.
give my university example. I
Mm-hmm.
mean the Hanyang University located
Mm-hmm.
in Seoul. They developed, they actually developed before in the past the
Mm-hmm.
online learning system. So it's not,
Mm-hmm.
we don't utilize the Zoom anymore, but we utilize
Okay.
our own system.
Yes.
So we have the privacy, we have like
Mm-hmm.
no issues with like privacy or stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
So it's like the
Uh,
cyber university will be like an open access for everyone now in the
oh,
university level. Like
can you repeat that?
because there were already cyber universities even before, so maybe it will just accommodate more students nowadays.
Oh yes, that's true. But at the same time, the professors are feeling pagod. They're tired just
Yes,
to do the online
prepare.
class every time. Yes,
Uh-huh.
it's different, especially for older generation
Uh-huh.
professors. They are having some kind of
They need
difficulties to
assistance.
adjust. Yes, they need assistance. Usually we have the TAs in the
Uh-huh.
universities, so it's good. But still, they still need to make like a script. If they are recording the classes, they need to make the script
Uh-huh.
with typing
Yes.
stuff. Or if they are
Oh.
doing the live streaming
Mm-hmm.
classes, they still feel like tired with the eyes
Mm-hmm.
or
Yeah.
talking in a different way, but they still have to talk a lot because it's online. So
Mm-hmm.
lecturers tends to talk more than in the offline class. Or yeah.
But I think in the case of South Korea, there you don't have much issues on the internet connections, unlike here in the Philippines, and the gadgets as well.
Yes, yeah,
Like
that's
students
not
have
the major
access.
complaints.
Yeah, yeah. Because in the Philippines case, a lot are complaining about. Of course, they don't have gadgets, and of course, the internet connections at home. So, yeah, it's a
Mm.
very great issue nowadays in the Philippines. Okay, so maybe we can proceed more to, yeah. How about teaching tourism in Korea during? Uh, I can get this question much. So, what could be your suggestion how to go about in teaching tourism in Korea? So maybe do you have something more to add to this?
Mm. I'm sorry, I'm not really education expert
Uh-huh. So maybe
for
it's
this question. I
already
cannot
yeah.
think about, yeah.
Mhm. Okay, I think this is a very impossible question to answer.
Mm.
So when do you think would the travel be back to norm? To 100% normal. No one can answer this one, right?
But yeah, maybe I can just, yeah, think about that. Well, as I said earlier, I believe that, oh, as I
Yeah,
said
this
that
is
I
the last
believe that
question,
mhm.
and then we can now proceed to the Q&A. The questions that were sent just today. So you
Maybe
have
we can
some,
pick one or two.
yeah, yes. So yeah, I think some questions were already answered a while ago, like the teaching in the classroom. So regarding Korea's policy and response programs, so can you also view the Q&A, right?
Yes,
You can view the, yeah, it's in the sent by June TV.
there
Regarding
is
Korea's policy and response programs, I'm not sure if there is a significant number of micro enterprises in Korea that are involved in tourism, but if there are, how did the Korean government came up with an inclusive response program where even small businesses benefit? So it's like in perspective, micro enterprises form a significant number of tourism enterprises in the Philippines. And this includes businesses that aren't,
oh.
okay, there's a question. Uh, Businesses aren't fully registered, thus are often skip informal government interventions despite their direct effect in their respective community economy. So this is a very long question. So,
Well, first, there is a significant number of micro enterprises in Korea, especially in tourism.
uh-huh, yes,
Um, I think I need to clarify what micro enterprises, but if
yeah. I think these
it's
ones are the family owned ones, like the Pojang Matcha and other the small
Mhm.
ones,
If we are talking about the travel agencies, like small
which is
travel agencies, we have
agencies
a
as
lot.
well. Mm-hmm.
Yes, we have thousands of travel agencies in Korea. Well,
Mm-hmm.
for the tourists, they only say like big travel agencies like Hana Tour, Modu
Mm-hmm.
Tour, or something like that. They usually use it, but sometimes they are the small enterprises, small travel agencies are connected with the bigger um, agencies, or even for like B2B service agencies as
Mm-hmm.
well. So even though people book their travel package tours or the
Mm-hmm.
hotels by the big representative um, companies,
Mm-hmm.
the operations might be from the smaller enterprises. So in Korea,
Mm-hmm.
we work like that. So the big company is more like distributional channel, while the
Mm-hmm.
micro enterprises are like the operational channels. So it's a
Mm-hmm.
lot. And if there are how did the Korean government came up with an inclusive responsible program? They uh they let they let the travel agencies and also relevant tourism um,
Mm-hmm.
companies to apply with the sort of like documents and their like a
Mm-hmm.
criteria that they judge whether they evaluate whether it's small company enough or whether it's most impacted, most seriously impacted company or not. They
Mm-hmm.
evaluate all the stuff. So uh, they do not give money to all the companies, but they give a small number of money to maybe bigger companies, or they don't give
Mm-hmm.
any money, but they give more money to the smaller ones or the one that are damaged seriously, so the small business can get the benefits. But at the same time, there are still complaints from the small business players that it's still not unfair.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I'm not saying that we are doing ideally, but they are pursuing to provide the money fairly
Mm-hmm.
and then inclusively.
Yes. Okay, maybe like last two questions. Like, one is related to the previous one. Like, for example, do you have like the freelance tour guides in South Korea? Would you know of specific programs of government that supports freelance tour guides? Do you have
Freelancer tour guides.
freelancer tour guides? Yes,
Yeah, we have
like
freelancer tour
individuals.
guides.
Mm-hmm.
We call them more like we call them part-timers. They
Mm-hmm.
work not only for one company, but they work for different companies. Sometimes they just work for tour by tour. Um, but what was the question? I cannot find the questions actually.
Ah, like, do you have freelance tour guides? And then would you know specific programs of government to support freelance tour guides in particular? Like, for example, because
Uh,
they don't have work these days as well.
yes, they do get it. They do get even
They
though
can
they are just
apply.
part-timers, yes, they can
Mm-hmm.
apply for if
Support.
they are unemployed, if they don't have the money, they can
Mm-hmm.
apply for um, living costs, like three
Mm-hmm.
months, and especially for those, um, it's actually a lot. They need to find out with the programs that suit for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So is
Mm-hmm.
yeah, for sure, the part timers and the freelancers they will have more opportunity to get some
Mm-hmm.
benefits.
Okay. There's a follow-up or clarification with regards to the previous question. Like, this is the micro enterprises. Is this the small businesses are like those on street, like the street vendors, like the
Mm.
ones I mentioned earlier, like Pojang Matcha, like the authentic street foods.
So yeah,
So,
you're right. The Pojangmatcha.
so
Thank you
yeah,
for the
I thought.
question. I don't know who you are, but thank you for the question. Street vendors. It's a complicated problem in Korea actually, because most street vendors are not registered. So
uh But are they allowed to
um,
operate nowadays?
for some are allowed to operate if
Mm-hmm.
they are registered, but unregistered street vendors are not allowed, but they still do it. and most of the support from the government
Mm-hmm.
are provided to the registered street vendors.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so I'm skeptical that the street vendors who are not registered, they are
Mm-hmm.
actually the majority of the street vendors. They might not be able to get the support from the government, especially for the um, tourism specific programs.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm. Yeah, that's actually great. That's actually a good point that may give some ideas like how to support them, because they're like in the burden between the illegality and legality at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
but they are having they are having the monetary issues as well. So how to deal with these people will be one of the um, point that we need to discuss a lot.
Mm-hmm. Actually, there are still lots of questions, but I'm worried that we cannot accommodate some of them. But actually, some of them were already answered a while ago. I'm trying to check one last question that
Maybe,
we can accommodate.
yeah, we can I can answer one last question, and then if you have more questions, I will actually write down my email
Email
address here.
address.
So
Uh-huh.
mhm. So
So.
you can freely send a email and we can discuss, or if I have
Mm-hmm.
anything to help, maybe I can, yeah, support. Maybe I
Mm-hmm.
can send some information or sources or stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Actually, there is one interesting question. Actually, there's
Mm-hmm.
two, but the other one is like considering that Korea is at present starting to open its doors, is the country ready for the threat of second wave and third wave of the COVID pandemic? So, is it given?
Ah,
Is it the answer is given?
this is not tourism, but I haven't observed about um how to handle with the second or third
Mm-hmm.
wave of the COVID pandemic. But I think I see that the government is trying to manage it so the second or third waves will not come. Like they try to micro monitor the
Mm-hmm.
patients or the outbreak situations. So I think like they don't want the waves.
Mm-hmm. So I don't know if you have like you can comment on this like in the Philippines, what's your take on the Philippine tourism setting in the government's response in shutting everything down? Like everything is closed, but the malls are open. Do you agree with the government's response to its own version of the uh, enhanced community quarantine and the modified community quarantine? Yeah. Because in the Philippines, yeah, the situation is that other places are closed, but
Okay.
they open the mall.
First of all, this is hard to answer because
Yeah.
I need to be more specific. Um, I need to be depending on the context in the
Uh-huh.
Philippines. So it might be different with Korean
Mm-hmm.
In Korea, or it might be different in the Philippines. Um,
Okay, maybe you can
yeah, it's
just
hard. I'm sorry.
yeah. Maybe this
I
last
tried to
question.
answer, but it's so hard and sensitive.
Yeah. So you have to be careful as well. And then uh maybe we can end with this last questions. How did Korean culture play a role in the response to the pandemic in South Korea? Yeah. Do you think
Ah,
there's
yeah, this is a very interesting
yeah,
question.
maybe
How
we can
did
end this
Korean
with
culture
one
play?
question. Yes. Like for
I
example, in the sense of physical distancing, like
mhm,
yeah, and other cultural uh, aspects that contributed to
mhm.
the uh, question of
Okay.
how to address the
The
pandemic.
one of the Korean cultures is that we care about we sense we care about we heavily care about the people around us. Um,
Mhm.
we care about the social pressure a lot. We get pressured by the society a lot.
Mhm.
Um, in the situation of COVID-19 in South Korea, we had the social pressure that we need
Mhm.
to not harm the people around us, including the family, the workmates, or the classmates, or something like that. And so this played a great role to follow the rules because, like, let's say that I get affected by the COVID-19, and since as I said, that my roots, the places that I went, will be opened to the society. Yeah, it's gonna be impacted to my people around me. They're gonna be they're also gonna be isolated until they found they're negative or not, and then they're gonna yeah, they're gonna be
Mhm.
um conflicts or stuff like that. There are gonna be social
Mhm.
pressure.
Yes.
So this is in some ways stressful, but in
Mhm.
other way, this helped
Mhm.
us to be very organized and
Mhm.
keep the social distancing rules very well.
Mhm. Yeah.
So that's how the Korean culture played the role in the response to the pandemic.
Mhm.
Um, Another thing that I can think, well, yeah,
Mhm.
that's all.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's a good aspect that we can end this session, and also like it goes to show that it's a consolidated effort between or among the Korean people and then the Korean community and the government's efforts. So, and then uh, I saw one last question. Are you satisfied with the government's initiatives personally?
Wow, I didn't expect that I'm gonna get a lot of questions about
Uh-huh. Yeah,
this
people
kind
are
of things.
really interested in your. Maybe you'll receive a lot of emails because a lot of questions are not yet
Mhm.
answered.
I'm
Generally, are you satisfied enough?
generally is really hard.
Uh-huh.
I'm satisfied that I can
Are you
be
happy that
helped.
you are
I'm
Korean?
well, I need to be complex. I'm satisfied that I'm healthy in terms of
Mm-hmm.
physicality, and I'm not satisfied that my freedom is
Mm-hmm.
restricted and my
Mm-hmm.
privacy is harmed. Yeah, that's my
Mm-hmm.
question. That's my answer.
Wow. Yeah, it's like a Miss Universe question. Okay, so thank you so much for all your inputs and your insights about the Korean government initiatives as well as the community response. So maybe we could learn a lot from the Korea's experience. And we would like to thank you for your time and effort and for your specialization and your
Thank you
uh,
for having me.
for your research as well. So yes, so we would like to present your certificate through email. Actually, it was already sent to you. So
Yes,
we
I
really
received it.
appreciate uh, having you here today. And for those who want to be connected with Professor Lee, you can email him and then you can exchange ideas as well. So before we end today's session, I would also like to promote the upcoming events of the Korea Research Center. I think you could just visit the FB or Facebook page, and you can also email uh, the Korea Research Center. Like for information or updates, you can visit www.facebook.com /UPKRC. So, and also you can send email to pkrc@up.edu.ph. Okay, so with that, we would like to end this webinar session and then thank you so much. 감사합니다.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. 감사합니다. Maraming salamat po.
Maraming salamat.
Sir, pa-end meeting all na lang po.
Okay. Sige. Thank you so much, Mr. Will.
No problem po.